Humor me this. What happened if the Indiana Pacers actually win this thing? What if they win the championship? I want to touch on that. I want to play a little what if game, call it, for mostly them, mostly the Pacers, because I find that would be the most interesting thought or thoughts to think about, but also OKC. I want to dive into both teams. What would it actually mean if they won? If OKC wins, they're the favorites. I think most people would assume that they are going to win, but who knows? Indiana, most people also wouldn't have assumed Indiana have made it this far as is. So that's the fun part about it. But I want to talk about what it would actually mean if Indiana surprised everybody. Maybe not everybody, but most of the people, and actually won the championship, because it's quite fascinating to think about. Because I don't think anyone, literally anybody, would have predicted Indiana to be here, except for those within the organization. I always find it funny, or maybe not funny, because you have to have that self-belief. You have to sort of, you have to probably speak those things in the core of every franchise that's not rebuilding. You probably have to speak those mindsets into action. In terms of, setting a championship culture. So it's interesting. So I've got four things, a few things of what will happen if Indiana win, and then OKC. Let's jump into it. So if Indiana win the whole thing, will this be the most unpredictable champion ever? And I don't know if is that like a clickbait type headline, or is that fact? Because you'd have to go through, obviously, history. You'd have to go through every single champion in NBA history to work out if this would be the most unexpected champion ever. But I just think it's quite fascinating to look at, because you look at their record in general, and they were fourth seed in the East, so middle to top tier, record of 50-32. So they're a good team. They're a solid team, and that's what's kind of interesting about Indiana, because at the start of the season, if you were to ask me who came out of the East, I think I said Milwaukee. I thought, Dame would get it together. Giannis is Giannis. Maybe he'd have like an MVP season. I was thinking Milwaukee. There's a few other contenders. Cavs obviously hot out the gates. Killed it, but injuries and other stuff didn't work for him. Luck was not on their side. But who the hell would have predicted Indiana to be there out of the East? I'm not sure. And that's why it's just fascinating to think about if they walk away as champions of the entire thing. The other one is the whole Tyrese Haliburton conversation, and I'll touch on this soon. That's my next point. But you look at the head of the snake, so to speak, of a champion team, Tyrese Haliburton. His average is a 19, 4, and 9 in the regular season. And you would not think that a champion level team would have kind of like I'm sure if you went through history, I'm sure the top player would have higher averages than that. I mean, it is 2010, but stats are advanced these days. It's more of an offensive game, so it's inflated. But you'd assume that a star player, the best player on a champion team, would have better stats than that. But maybe not. Maybe that's the beauty of it. It reminds me of that Atlanta Hawks team all those years ago with like Jeff Teague, Paul Millsap, Kyle Korver, other players like that, who they had like 3 or maybe even 4 All-Stars that you might not even assume they were All-Stars before that. And they were, because the team gelled together so well. They made a few playoff runs, or maybe just one, but maybe it's like that. You don't need to be an absolute superstar at the front of your pack to win. It's interesting to think about. So is it unreasonable to think that they would be the most unexpected champion ever? Not sure. Next one. If Indiana do win, nobody can argue Tyrese Haliburton's star status. Now, I would still edge on the side of precaution of calling him a star player. Because what is a star? A guy that shows up every single night and gives you, he might be a scorer, defender, assisting, rebounding, defense, something. But I just named every single possible category in basketball. But you're going to show up every single night in a similar fashion, in a high fashion. And somebody said it online perfectly the other day. They said Tyrese Haliburton, any given night, can give you 4 and 6 or 20 and 40. Just exaggerating what he does on the floor, but it's kind of true. Some games he's going to give you like that 30-point outing in game, whatever it was, last series. Then he comes out the next game and has like 8 points and 6 assists. The one thing he's pretty damn consistent is not turning the ball over. But that's about it. And playmaking. But sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get with him, whether it is that star performance. And that is just why I don't think you can call him a star. But if they win it all, I think you have to call him a star. As funny as it sounds. That you literally can't argue that because he's the head of the snake, as I just said. He starts this thing. He leads from the front. And if he's enough to give you a championship and earn his team a championship, you have to call him a star, right? That's what I'm rolling with. Next, and I like this term. If Indiana win it all, Miles Turner becomes like a loyalty legend. Now that sounds really corny. But in terms of sticking with a franchise for 10 years, sticking it out, it was the 11th pick all the way back in 10 years ago. So I'm going to say it's 2015. Mathematics. Stuck it out with the exact same franchise. You love the stories of those guys. And if he becomes a champion for the franchise that drafted him 10 years ago, that story is awesome. And any sort of fan would appreciate that. So I just really like that storyline of Miles Turner. Probably like an underrated guy in his career. He's averaged double digits ever since he set foot on the court wearing a Pacers uniform. And he hasn't looked back. So that's a great one. Next one. If Indiana win, Pascal Siakam had a series for the ages. One of the best in history, because I don't know how Indiana win without him doing so. Like, how do they actually put enough points on the board? How do they actually go against OKC's defense enough if he's not having like an incredible series? And if he does, maybe we just have to start ranking him higher in the all-time history books, because he'd be a two-time champion. He obviously won with Toronto. Tyrese Haliburton said they got the champ over there in some press conference, but that's what he is. His resume will speak for itself. Two-time champ, however many All-Star appearances, Eastern Conference MVP. Maybe he'd be the Finals MVP as well. He probably would be. Between him and Tyrese Haliburton if Indiana get this thing done. But they have 4 points. OKC are a different story, because I'm not a betting man, but I'd love to know the percentages of how many people, what the markets are saying in terms of OKC's favor. Like who's betting against OKC? Who's betting for the Pacers? That's what I want to know. But if OKC win, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will join elite company. Now, I had to look at this. I had to look this up. How many players in the history of the NBA have won both the MVP and a championship in the same season? It's happened. I'll give you a moment to think. It's actually quite interesting to think about. So it's happened 13 times, but 10 players have done it. I'll say that again. It's happened 13 times in history, but that is across 10 players, because Michael Jordan, 3 times. Interesting. So he'd join a list of 10 players. He'd be the 11th player to do so. And some of the names on those lists are obviously, you obviously expect it to be awesome company. Steph Curry, 2015, he was the last one. Before that, Shaq, 2000. As I said, MJ, 3 times. LeBron, never. LeBron's never done it. Something LeBron has never done, SGA would have done. Pretty cool. If OKC win, I don't think they're too young mindset will be a thing. Or it would be a thing that a lot of people sort of drop off. They won't think that way anymore. For the longest time that I can remember, that's always been an excuse or a reason why a team can't win. And if OKC win it, a team that has an average roster age of 26 years, I should say, I just don't think that would be much of a thing anymore. If OKC can prove they can do it, now they might be an outlier. Maybe it'll still be an absolute known fact that you need X amount of experienced veterans on your team. But maybe not. Let me just run down some of their ages. Their MVP is 26. Their starting 5 averages out to be 25 years old. That's young. Now, the only veterans in their lineup, and these 2 of them are the ones that get actual court time, although Kenrich Williams started to get more burn towards the end of that series. But Alex Caruso, 31, obviously sort of like a 6-man type of role. Isaiah Hartenstein, 27 years old, and Kenrich Williams, as I just mentioned, 30. They are the only vets. Literally the only ones on that OKC roster team. Quite fascinating, really. I was fully expecting to see more on that roster, and just be like, they don't really count because they don't get in. But they don't even have like other veterans on the roster that are purely there, like the Joe Ingles roster or role, or other players like that are kind of like the locker room presence. They don't even have that, which is quite interesting in itself. Next, if OKC win, then people are going to say that it was the easy road. There wasn't much competition, because I know people are already saying that there's not that much firepower in the finals. Like, these 2 teams are not big name franchises. They're not big markets. But I think it's refreshing. Honestly, I was seeing like a debate online the other day, and it was more like I can see two sides to it, but I think this is a refreshing end to the season because, look, humans are always going to find something to complain about. We are. That's just the nature. And remember, not long ago, it was the NBA is too predictable. Every single year, it's going to be the Cavs versus Warriors in the finals, and that's that. That everyone just says it was too predictable, and they use that as not a reason to watch. But now it's like there's no powerhouse teams. Like, who wants to watch OKC and Indiana in the finals? Which way? Which way are you going to have it? Because you can only have it one way. Predictable or not predictable at all. And this is just a refreshing matchup. So I think people will sort of look at this and be like, what? OKC won the championship, cool. But they beat Indiana. And they're just going to like frown at Indiana for that. But hopefully they can make it a series in terms of like if OKC win, maybe it can be a 7-game series. It can actually be like that argument is dead. But also, even if it's not that way, look at their road to get here. First in the West, 68-14 record. Every time I look at that record, I'm like, that just sounds stupid. 68-14 is obviously elite. Jump into the first round of the playoffs, 4-0 sweep against Memphis. Few injury concerns there with Memphis, and it wasn't exactly a great watch. That was round 1. They go to Denver in round 2, but they win 4-3. So that's a 7-game series. That's a test. They're the champs? Not the champs. Boston were the champs. But they are a championship level team. So that's obviously a big test. They got through that. But then it's just they go back to facing Minnesota in the last series. That was 4-1. So you'd see why these people might, say that it's the easy road, or OKC just beat the Pacers in the final. But I don't know. There's something in that. I think it's gonna be pretty crazy if Indiana actually do win. But I do think OKC is going to be too strong. We saw their defense was elite. I've got no idea how Pacers score enough points to consistently over those 7 games to just outmatch that. Unless OKC have a shocker, unless something happens, I don't know. Good luck to you, Indiana. I just hope they make it a fun, competitive series. And maybe they'll just continue to surprise people.